There has been a great deal of discussion as to what is driving grain and corn prices. Do you believe increasing rail costs are part of the reason we are seeing higher commodity prices?
No. Rail costs have nothing to do with the price of the commodity paid by on the top side. We've seen a reduction of $4 per bushel in wheat in the last 2 months, yet we haven't seen a reduction in bread costs. So the commodity prices have nothing to do with on the top side have nothing to do with. They have to do with what the farmer actually gets for his wheat, but not what the top side of the.
Can you explain to us how do rail rates generally affect the bottom line of for farmers?
What we are paid for wheat comes off, the freight cost comes off our per bushel of wheat. Like where I am, we take the futures market and subtract the freight cost to get what I'm paid for a bushel of wheat. So that's how and all freight costs come off that, including rail, trucking, whatever it takes to get it to the market.
Dr. Keith, I understand you believe that the Surface Transportation Board, STB, is not being proactive in their case management. What are some examples of delivery problems your shippers are facing?
Well, one of the most common complaints we get is when facilities will order a train to be delivered for loading. There are restrictions on how long you have to load. Generally, it's 15 hours, or you start to incur penalties. And so you try to plan for the arrival of the train, and you try to have labor available. But it is still very unpredictable when some trains will be delivered, and sometimes they're delivered on Friday night at midnight and those kinds of things. So it forces the labor situation at your facility to be more difficult to manage. We're also getting some complaints about slow approval of new switches to gain access to rail service, in particular in new ethanol facilities where they're trying to ship both the ethanol product as well as the DDG's byproduct. So
can you talk to us as to how STB handled those type of complaints?
Well, the STB has a formal complaint process that you have to go through if you want to lay out arguments. They've also got an informal complaint process that you can go to a particular office and sometimes get quick resolution. On things like this, though, that have a significant impact on a business, generally you'd go through a formal complaint process. And those formal complaints can take a long time. That's part of the problem. There was a complaint that was on storage of tank cars that lasted 5 years from start to finish, and it just shouldn't take that long. We think the STB is starting to improve in some areas and trying to expedite some, but when it takes 5 years of litigation and it gets costly, it sours relationships with your carrier, and we should be able to do better than that, frankly.
Okay. Ms. Hotchkiss, one of the problems you mentioned is how the lack of rail car access creates unpredictable or limited coal shipments. Has this problem become so severe that rural electric co-ops are seeking alternatives to coal?
Well, Madam Chairwoman, this problem, I wish we could do it that quickly, or it's like taking off a coat and putting on another coat. When you build a power plant, it's built specifically to burn a particular fuel. In this case, that they're impacted by this problem are coal plants. So to seek an alternative fuel for those particular plants is really not an option. So what we try to do is when inventories get too low, sometimes we have to buy on the spot market, which is very expensive, and that flows right down to consumers and costs. Or we have to import coal from foreign sources, and ultimately it is cheaper to do that, which to me just doesn't make sense when we are so rich in that particular mineral resource.
So you don't see in the foreseeable future rural electrical co-ops start shifting towards alternative sources of fuel?
Well, I think if this particular problem isn't solved, as well as other challenges that we face in the electric industry that perhaps aren't specific to this particular problem, we will be looking at other sources, for instance, natural gas perhaps, but then you have capacity problems and pipeline issues that they have to be built out for that. So there isn't a really good solution. Our view is that these exorbitant costs and poor service and poor resolution process at the STP needs to be resolved so we can bring a better value to our consumer. Because right now, that's not bringing a value to the consumer.
Thank you. Mr. Weber, I heard when you say that you have been involved for almost 34 years or 35 years. Can you compare service and rates from when you began your business with today? What are some of the changes you have seen?
Madam Chairwoman, I think the major change is the shift from the local, I must say, yard having the control to position our cars versus going to a regional control, so that the local no longer makes that decision. The cars may be sitting in their yard, but they're taking direction from a regional distribution control. And I think that's the major. Before, we could talk to the local and tell them what we expected as far as needing a car in so many days or where we were at in that movement, and now we don't have access to that regional guy. Well, they answer the phones. You get recordings instead of people.
Okay. With utilization of new technology, is rail service better today than it was 35 years ago?
No. Do you want me to expand on it? I do. I don't think so. I think we have more difficulty getting, especially the 2- and 3-car shipments than we ever have. And I understand the economics. The railroad wants to push for the multiple car, 65-car plus units, 85 cars, much more economical for them. But that's not what our facilities were built around. When most of them were built around 2- and 3-car receiving locations in the 60s and 70s, and so it is not, it's not improved, it's deteriorated.